First, Sony and a new hacking scandal and how the company is banning customers from accessing their accounts. Just to rewind, when computer games first arrived in the early 80s, they were played on machines like this, the Sinclair Spectrum, and the games came on cassettes. In the 90s, technology moved on with the Sega Mega Drive, and games then came in plastic cartridges. But these disappeared in the mid-90s with the arrival of the PlayStation, the cartridges replaced by CDs. Now, you don't even need a CD. The PlayStation 4 allows you to buy and download games over the internet. You open an account, put in your bank details, and get shopping. But beware, if your account is hacked, don't expect Sony to pick up the tab.
What are we going to do? I don't want to die. Again?
As far as I can see, we've only got three options. Option 1, we check out YouTube and hope someone shared the answer via the PS4 share button. Option 2, we send Dave a message via the PlayStation app and ask him for help.
Hey, Dave. Don't suppose you know how to survive the Viking attack, do you?
Sony's latest advert would have you believe its online network is a wonderful place for gamers. A community where you can play alongside friends, share tips, and interact with people from all over the globe.
But be wary, because once you're in Sony's virtual world, there's a lot more to worry about than just coming under fire from your opponents.
Like becoming a victim of fraud. Just ask Sony customer John Lappin from Essex.
I received an email from Sony thanking me for my purchase of Shadow of Mordor on a PlayStation 3, which is a game I wasn't interested in on a console I don't own. So it seemed obvious to me that someone else had used my account details and used the money on there to buy the game for themselves.
So, what exactly had happened? Well, John, like many players, had uploaded money to his PlayStation account so he could do things like download games or buy in-game items, say weapons. But someone on the network had managed to access John's account and used it to download a £40 game to their own console. A nice little outcome for that fraudster.
John presumed it was an open and shut case, that Sony would recognise it as fraud and refund the money. Little did he realise he was in for a real fight, because Sony refused to reimburse a penny.
The company pointed to its terms and conditions, where it states each customer is entirely responsible for everything that happens to their account. In other words, if it gets compromised, that's your problem, not Sony's.
At first, I was just confused by it, and I became a little angry. I couldn't quite believe the policies. They just made it clear they weren't going to refund me. It just became laughable in the end.
In John's case, he only lost £40, but in fact, there's no limit to the amount you're liable for. Under Sony's terms and conditions, if £1,000 was taken, you wouldn't get a penny back. And fraud of this kind isn't rare. We've heard of 57 others who say Sony refused to compensate them when their accounts were compromised. And there's plenty more online.
Now, it could be argued the players themselves are the reason why their accounts have been compromised. They could be careless with their login details or have them stolen via some online scam. Whilst this may be the case with some, the players we've spoken to are adamant it did not happen to them. Which begs a question. Is the PlayStation network itself vulnerable to hacking? After all, Sony has a pretty patchy track record when it comes to data breaches.
Anyone trying to connect to the PlayStation network over the Easter break might have had a bit of trouble. It's been offline for the past 6 days after an attack by hackers.
In 2011, Sony admitted that hackers had stolen data relating to 77 million users, including usernames and passwords. And in 2014, it was hacked again, allegedly by North Korea, with thousands of documents released into the public domain.
It seems odd, then, that Sony seemed to be so unsympathetic when hacking appears to some of its customers, albeit on a much smaller scale. And understandably, then, those who have lost money don't just roll over and accept it. They look elsewhere for help. They ask credit card companies or the bank to refund those fraudulent transactions. But when that happens, boy, does Sony not like that.
Under the Payment Services Regulations, if your bank or credit card company agrees your details have been used fraudulently, you must be fully refunded, which is exactly what Alex Archer asked his bank to do.
There was £114 worth of games that were purchased through my online PlayStation account, so contacted Sony. They refused to refund any of the money, so I had no option but to contact my bank, and they gladly refunded the money for me.
And once the bank had refunded Alex, it took that £114 back from Sony.
And how did Sony react to that? Well, not very well. In fact, it blocked Alex's account, banishing him from accessing any of its online services and from all the purchases he'd previously made.
Can't play any games now that I downloaded through the PlayStation Store. Can't use any of the online features at all on any game, which, I mean, effectively renders the console completely useless.
Alex has been told that's how things will stay until he pays Sony back. And we've seen this same kind of behaviour with 21 others, all of whom say they've been banned by Sony until they agree to reimburse the money reclaimed by their bank or credit card company. And remember, we're talking the kind of figures which are small fry for a company which is worth £22 billion.
So, a company with a history of being hacked takes no responsibility if their customers' accounts are being compromised and then banishes them if they attempt to stand up for themselves. Sounds like one of those daft storylines from one of their games they sell, just not one you'd ever want to play.
Well, Sony has now concluded that both John and Alex were indeed victims of fraud. It admits their treatment fell below the standards the company sets for itself and has now reinstated both accounts to ensure neither is out of pocket. It'll also be reviewing the investigation process that occurs whenever there's an accusation of unauthorised account use. Sony says it takes security very seriously and has industry-leading measures in place to protect its customers. However, it does emphasise the need for everyone to do the utmost to protect their details online. It suggests visiting these two websites for advice on how to do this. But will Sony stop blocking the accounts of anyone who's been defrauded? Well, we've pushed it on this point, and it admitted it had lessons to learn, but said it would carry on suspending the accounts of customers who say they've been hacked whilst they investigate claims. So watch out. Now, that story, like so many we investigate, began when you got in touch. So if you have something you'd like us to take a look at, email us at watchdog@bbc.co.uk.